today's lesson we're going to look at trigonometry, and we'll do this over a few lessons. We're going to get as far as finding a missing side today, but I'll start off with the very basics and explaining the three different trig functions that we need to know: sine, cos and tan. What so ca toa is, it's just simply a saying that helps us to remember which trig function to use when we're dealing with different sides within a right angle triangle. I'll start off just by explaining where each of these come from. So, ca and toa. SOH means that we use sine vita equals opposite over hypotenuse. So if we're working within a triangle and using the opposite and hypotenuse sides, we use sine. Ca, CAH, cos being the C, A for adjacent, H for hypotenuse, means that if we're using adjacent and hypotenuse, we use cos. And tan, obviously representing the T here, O and A, opposite and adjacent. So if we're working with a triangle and using the opposite and adjacent sides, we use tan. Okay, so ca toa, sine, cos, tan. This just helps us to identify which trig function we will be using depending on the triangle, and that will become more clear when we come to tackling these types of examples here. But first off, I just want to show you quite quickly how we identify the different sides within a right angle triangle. Okay, so the three different sides we have to know are the hypotenuse, the opposite and the adjacent. So first off, the hypotenuse is the side that is always facing the right angle, and it's always the longest side. The opposite is the side opposite the given angle, so we would know that as vita within the equation. So whatever angle we're using, the side opposite that is what we would call opposite, and the adjacent being the side that is beside that angle, vita. Okay, so if I was to look at this triangle, here's my angle vita, there's my right angle. I can use that information to identify the three sides. So the side opposite or facing the right angle here is always the hypotenuse H. I'm just going to identify them using the letters O, A and H. This side here is the side that is opposite the given angle, so it is called opposite, and this side here is the side that is beside it, or what we would know as adjacent. So in this particular triangle with this angle given, that's what will be O, A and H. If it was this angle that we were working with up here, the O and the A would be swapped around, but the hypotenuse always stays the same. O and A are dictated by whatever angle we're using within the triangle. If I was to use this particular triangle, here's my right angle, here's the angle that I'm working with. So again, opposite the right angle is the hypotenuse, opposite the given angle vita is what's known as the opposite, beside it is adjacent. So that is how we label the three sides within a right angle triangle when it comes to trigonometry. Now, we'll move on to the examples of how to find a missing side when given enough information in questions of this nature. Okay, so there are three steps. The first thing is label the sides that we're working with. Okay, so the sides we're working with are the side X that we're trying to find and the side that we know. So this side that we know is opposite the right angle, so the 7 centimeters is our hypotenuse. This side X is the side that we're trying to find. It is opposite the angle that we're given. This is going to be vita within the equation, so it is opposite. Now we don't have to label the bottom side because we're not working with it. So this now helps us to decide whether we're using sine, cos or tan, and we referred to earlier so ca toa. So we know opposite and hypotenuse. The only one of these that has O and H is so therefore we're using sine. So after that, that's how we choose the trig function. We write it out. We write the equation out. Sine vita equals opposite over hypotenuse. I'll use the letters for short. The next step is then to substitute in the values. So when we substitute in the values, it's the values from our diagram. So vita is the angle, so sine 35 equals opposite, which is X that we're trying to find. Hypotenuse is 7. So we now know sine 35 equals X over 7. And then the last thing we do is we bring the 7 across. It's dividing on the right hand side, so when it comes across to the left, it multiplies. We end up with 7 sine 35, and we put that into our calculator. Okay, so 7 sine 35 equals 4.0 2. I'm going to give this answer to 2 decimal places. Usually within the exam it will dictate a suitable degree of accuracy, okay? So as in 1 decimal place, 2 decimal places, or maybe significant figures, okay? In these questions I'm going to give it to 2 decimal places. So my answer there is 4.02 centimeters. Now that might seem a lot, but once you get into a bit of practice, it's the same thing each time, okay? So again, starting off, identify the sides we're working with. It's the 9 centimeters and the side that's called Y. So the 9 centimeters is facing the right angle, so it is our hypotenuse. The side that is called Y is beside the angle that we're using, so it's adjacent. So this time we're using adjacent and hypotenuse. So referring to SOHCAHTOA, the only one with adjacent and hypotenuse is cos. So cos theta equals adjacent over hypotenuse. Cos theta equals A over H. Now we substitute in our values. Cos 40, theta being the angle, equals A, the value that we're trying to find, over 9. So the 9 is dividing over here. When we bring it across to the left hand side, it becomes multiply. So we end up with 9 cos 40. Put that into our calculator. 9 cos 40. Okay. 6.89. And again, just to point out, by the way, sine, cos and tan, there they are on our calculator. And check your own calculator because each of them might be slightly different. And when we come to later lessons, such as finding a missing angle within a right angle triangle, I'll teach you how to use the inverse functions. Last example that we're going to look at, just so we don't go too far with this lesson, is this one here. So again, just a little bit of repetition to help us to remember. Label the sides that we're working with. So this side that's labelled 5 is opposite the angle it's given, so it is the opposite face. This side along the top is beside the angle it's given, so it is adjacent, so we're using opposite and adjacent. So let's go to SOHCAHTOA. The only one with opposite and adjacent is tan, so we're using tan this time. Tan beta equals opposite over adjacent. So tan beta equals opposite over adjacent. Substitute in my values. So tan, the angle is 27 this time, equals the opposite, which is 5 over adjacent, which is W. Okay, and just the reason I wanted to cover this type of question with you is because this time the unknown value that we're trying to find is on the bottom line of the fraction, whereas previously it was on the top line for these two examples. Okay? When this happens, what we do is we're going to swap the W and the tan 27 around. Okay, so they're doing the opposite on each side. So W is equal to 5 over, or 5 divided by tan 27. So it depends on the calculator you have. If it's an older calculator, you might have to type 5 divided by tan 27. And this one, I can literally, handy thing about the Casio calculators, I can use the fraction button, which is here, and I can hit that and I can put 5 on the top line and tan 27 on the bottom, close the bracket, and hit equals, and I get 9.81. So W is 9.81. So just keep an eye out for that type of question where once you do your substitution, the unknown is on the bottom line. In that case, just swap the unknown on the bottom with the sign on the left hand side. Okay, I'll put some questions up for the practice, and anything you're unsure about, just ask.